I only wanted to make him smile. That's why I hid in his car. But when the door opened and I heard the woman's voice next to him, my blood froze. And in the next 10 minutes, I learned that the man I'd trusted for 30 years was planning something I never imagined. My name is Bessie. I'm 58. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far my story travels. Your words truly keep me going and I can't wait to hear what you think. It started on an ordinary Thursday that felt gentle enough to trust. I baked Martin's favorite lemon pound cake, wrapped it in the blue kitchen towel he likes because it smells like home, and drove to his office just before sunset. His silver sedan was there, tucked into the corner space under the crooked elm tree. I parked 2 rows over, heart beating with silly excitement, then walked across the lot like a teenager sneaking into a movie. The back door was unlocked. I slid inside and crouched behind the driver's seat, cake balanced on my knees, breath held, a little tremble in my hands that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with love. The lot hummed with after-work noise, doors slamming, heels on asphalt, a laugh that wasn't mine. Minutes stretched thin. At last, footsteps approached. The driver's door opened. Martin sank into the seat. His keys jingled, my heart did too. Then the passenger door opened and a woman slipped in. At first, the smell of her perfume hit me. Expensive, bright, the kind that announces itself before a person does. I thought maybe an assistant catching a ride. I told myself anything kind. But then she spoke and my blood went cold. Move the seat back, Marty. I hate when my knees bump the dash. I knew that voice. I knew it in the way you know your own name. Clara. I mouthed without sound. My sister's daughter. My niece. The girl who called me Auntie B and ate frosting from the bowl with me every Christmas. My throat closed around air that suddenly felt like glass. Martin laughed softly, the way he laughs with strangers he wants to charm. They're better. Much. Paused, the rustle of a bag. Did you transfer the money? I told you, I'm working on it, he said low and quick. She's slower than I hoped. Slower. Clara's perfume swirled in the warm car. Martin, we can't keep waiting. The mortgage on the lake house is due next month. If she won't sign, we push. Don't say push, he snapped. Then quieter, not here. Silence. A gear shift. The engine stayed off like the car itself refused to move another inch without hearing the truth. Clara lowered her voice in a way that made it meaner. She trusts you. Make her feel fragile. You said the stairs are steep. You said she gets dizzy sometimes. I said she gets tired, Martin corrected. Don't twist my words. Fine. Tired. Claire bit off the word. Then help her see that the house is too much, and the accounts are complicated. Get power of attorney. After that it's easy. The cake slipped a fraction on my knees. Power of attorney. My name, my life turned into paperwork. I stared at my shoes in the dark footwell and thought about the day I loaned Clara the down payment for her first apartment. How she hugged me and said I was the closest thing to a second mother she had. I thought about the night Martin came home from a failed contract, and we ate cheap soup and laughed because at least we had each other. I thought about the way love can be a blindfold if you tie it too tight. Martin exhaled like a man choosing a smaller sin. She's sentimental about that house, he said. You can't just bulldoze her. It has her mother's teacups, her father's radio. And your future tied up in the attic, Clara cut in. Martin, I'm not asking you to bulldoze. I'm asking you to lead. Nudge. She'll never fight you. There was a whisper of fabric. Kiss maybe. I went still enough to feel my heartbeat behind my lips. Tell me again, Clara murmured, how we're going to celebrate when it's done. He didn't answer. Or maybe he did and I couldn't hear over the roaring in my ears. The memory roar of years spent stitching holes no one else could see. Birthdays on tight budgets. The day I sold my wedding pearls to keep Martin's small business alive. The summer I worked double shifts, hands raw with lemon and bleach so Clara could start college with new books and not used ones. I didn't hear the car door open. I only knew the conversation had ended when cool air slipped in and the perfume unwound itself. The passenger door shut. A different set of footsteps faded. Martin stayed, phone screen brightening his face. He typed for a long time, thumb pausing then typing again. My name flashed in my mind as if I could see it on his screen. Bessie. Sweet tired Bessie. Finally he started the engine and drove off. Not out of the lot but to the far fence, where a burned-out light kept a pocket of dusk. He killed the engine again and sat with his hands on the wheel. I could see his reflection in the side mirror, a man I recognized by shape, not by soul. He whispered, "Not to me. Don't make me do this." He left 10 minutes later. The car clicked into quiet. I stayed folded behind the seat, the cake heavy as a brick, until the last of the office lights went dark and the lot emptied into night. When I slipped out, my knees shook. The air tasted like metal. I put the cake on the passenger seat of my own car and drove home through streets I've known since the kids were little, every turn a memory. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the back seat, the glow of Martin's phone, the shadow of Clara's head leaning too close. His whisper echoed, "Don't make me do this." I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan, counting its slow turns until the hours bled into dawn. By breakfast, my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the coffee pot. I told myself to act normal. Normal was safety. Martin came down, tie already neat, face shaved too smooth. He kissed my cheek like nothing was wrong, like my whole world hadn't cracked open the night before. I watched him walk out the door carrying his briefcase, and I wondered if inside it was the paperwork meant to erase me. When the door shut, the silence roared. I sat at the kitchen table with pen and paper. I wrote down everything I'd heard. Power of attorney, transfer, push. Clara's voice saying make her feel fragile. The words looked even colder in ink. They looked like a verdict. I remembered the things Martin used to say, "We'll grow old here, B," or, "This house will always be ours." Now those promises felt like bait. That evening when he came home, I tried to catch his eyes. His gaze slid past me like I was part of the wallpaper. Over dinner he asked, too casually, "B, don't you think the stairs are getting harder? Maybe a smaller place would be easier on you." I froze with the fork in my hand. That was Clara's line. Word for word. I smiled. "I'm fine, Marty. These stairs built my legs." He chuckled, but I saw it. The flicker of irritation. The plan wasn't moving fast enough. After dishes, he slipped out for a late meeting. I waited 5 minutes, then followed. My heart nearly broke through my chest as I drove 2 streets over and saw his car already parked outside Clara's apartment. Lights glowed in her window. Their silhouettes moved back and forth across the curtains, one shadow leaning into the other. The nausea rose so sharp I had to grip the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Betrayal isn't one stab. It's a dozen tiny cuts, each one deeper because you never see it coming. I didn't knock. I didn't scream. I sat in the dark and memorized every detail. The time, the place, the way the curtains swayed when they laughed. Back home, I found the old camcorder in the drawer and set it charging on the counter. The little red light blinked steady like a pulse. If they wanted to make me fragile, they'd soon learn just how strong a woman can be when the ground under her is ripped away. This wasn't going to be about stopping them. It was going to be about catching them. The next morning, I pressed play on the old camcorder just to hear the soft whir of it come alive. That sound steadied me. Proof doesn't lie. People do. I tucked the camera into my purse before Martin came downstairs. He noticed the circles under my eyes, but only frowned as if I were an inconvenience. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked, reaching for the coffee pot. "Like a rock," I lied, stirring sugar into my mug. "Don't worry about me." He smiled then, but it wasn't warm. It was the smile of a man checking whether his mask still fit. That day I shadowed him, not close enough to be seen, just near enough to learn. He didn't drive straight to the office. Instead, he stopped at a notary service across town. I parked 2 rows back, camera ready. Through the glass I saw him hand over a folder thick with papers. I zoomed in, pulse racing. Across the top page, in bold letters, was "Durable Power of Attorney." My name beneath. My hand trembled so hard the lens blurred. But I kept filming. By the time he left, I had 10 minutes of footage. Martin smiling, nodding, pointing at my name on documents designed to strip me of everything I had ever built. That evening, Clara called the house. I picked up on the second ring, my voice low. She didn't realize it was me. "Martin," she said, impatience sharp in her tone. "Tell her this weekend. Don't drag it out. I want that signature by Sunday. If she resists," her voice lowered, "then we use the stairs. Do you hear me?" I couldn't breathe. My niece. My blood. Speaking of me like I was a chore to be cleared from a list. I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch until she hung up, annoyed. Then I pressed record on the landline's tiny cassette deck. Proof. By now I had more than suspicion. I had evidence. And evidence is power. That night when Martin sat across from me at dinner, I studied him like a stranger. He talked about bills, about groceries, about nothing that mattered. All the while I imagined playing back the tape, forcing him to hear Claire's voice planning my fall. But not yet. The greatest weapon isn't the blade you swing. It's the one you sharpen slowly until your enemy mistakes the silence for surrender. So I smiled, poured him another glass of wine and asked about his day. He didn't see the camera hidden on the shelf behind me, recording the exact moment his mask slipped when I mentioned the word stairs. I thought that would be enough for the night. But fate had more to show me. It was after midnight when I heard the creak of the porch boards. My eyes snapped open in the dark. Martin was beside me, but the bed was empty on his side. I slipped out quietly, bare feet against the cold floor, and crept to the top of the stairs. The front door was ajar, just a sliver. Through it, Clara slipped inside like she belonged here. She carried no purse, only a phone clutched in her hand, the screen's glow painting her face pale blue. I pressed the record button on the camcorder I had kept near my nightstand, almost on instinct. My thumb shook, but the red light blinked alive. Downstairs, Martin's voice was low. "Why are you here?" "You weren't answering," Clara hissed. "I needed to see you. You shouldn't come at night. If she wakes." "She won't," Clara interrupted, her heels clicking softly on the hardwood. "She sleeps like a stone. And even if she did, do you think she'd believe her own ears over you?" I leaned closer, holding my breath. The camcorder's lens caught them in the hallway below, framed in the half-light from the kitchen. "Clara, you have to be patient," Martin said, rubbing his face. "She's sentimental. That house, her parents, her memories. She's not going to just sign it away." "Then make her," Clara snapped. "You're her husband. He trusts you. Make her feel fragile. You said yourself she gets dizzy. Use that. Use the guilt. Once she signs, it's ours. The house, the savings, everything. And then the lake house is safe." Martin's voice cracked. "It isn't that simple." "Yes, it is." Clara moved closer, her perfume carrying even to where I hid. "Don't go soft now. You've been promising me for months. I won't wait forever." There was a pause, the faint rustle of fabric, and then his sigh. "A kiss." My stomach turned. "She'll never suspect," Martin murmured, softer now. "She's too tired." The word tired landed like a blade. They were turning my love, my trust, my body into a weakness they could exploit. I zoomed the lens tighter, capturing every detail. Clara's hand gripping Martin's arm, his face heavy with conflict, their voices threading together in betrayal. Finally, Clara pulled back. "Sunday," she said firmly. "Get it done by Sunday. Or I start making decisions myself." Then she slipped out as quickly as she had come, leaving Martin standing in the hallway with his head bowed. He didn't notice the red light blinking faintly from the shadows above him. I stayed crouched until the silence returned, my knees burning, the camcorder heavy in my hands. When I finally crawled back into bed, Martin stirred beside me. "Bathroom," he muttered sleepily. "Yes," I whispered. But inside I wasn't sleepy at all. I was awake. More awake than I'd been in years. Awake and armed with truth. That night changed everything. Because secrets whispered at midnight don't stay secrets when you've become the silent witness. By Sunday morning I already knew what I had to do. They wanted a tired, confused woman who would stumble on the stairs or sign papers without reading them. So that's exactly what I gave them on the surface. I shuffled into the kitchen, robe loose, hair uncombed. I left the camcorder hidden behind the bread box, its eye unblinking. Martin looked me over with concern he thought was convincing. "Did you sleep at all?" he asked. "Not well," I whispered, forcing a tremor into my voice. "These stairs, they do feel steeper lately. Maybe Clara's right. Maybe I'm getting too old for this house." His eyes flickered, triumph masked as sympathy. "Don't say that, B. We'll manage. But maybe you should think about making things easier for yourself. Downsizing. Handling the money together. You know, less stress." I lowered my gaze, twisting my wedding band. "Maybe you're right." I caught it then, the tiny exhale of relief. He thought the door had finally opened. He had no idea it was a door I was holding ajar for my own reasons. That afternoon Clara came by. She arrived with a casserole dish, all warmth and fake smiles. "Auntie B, you look pale. Are you eating enough?" Maybe we should sit down soon and talk about simplifying things for you. She set the dish down, her perfume filling the kitchen, and slipped a thick folder from her bag. The words property transfer peeked from the top sheet. Martin put his hand on mine. Just sign here, darling. It's only to make things smoother. For emergencies. My pen hovered. My heart hammered. But I let my hand tremble and said softly, I want to think about it. Clara's eyes hardened for a second, just a flash. Of course, Auntie. Take your time. But the sooner, the safer. The camcorder behind the bread box caught everything. Their coaxing tones, the documents they slid across the table, the way Clara tapped her nails impatiently while pretending to be caring. That night, I walked to my neighbor Marjorie's house with the tape in my purse. She was 71, a retired paralegal and one of the few people I trusted. When I played her the recording, her face went pale. My God, Bessie. This is criminal. They're not just planning theft, they're preparing for worse. I know. My voice cracked, but it was steady again when I added, that's why I need your help. I won't run. I won't hide. I want them exposed. Every lie, every whisper, every paper they push across this table. Marjorie pressed my hand. Then we build your case. Quietly. You keep acting fragile. Let them believe they're winning. Meanwhile, we'll line up every shred of proof. So I did. Over the next days, I left lights off on the stairs so they could remark on the danger. I faked dizziness when Clara offered her arm. I forgot bills on the counter so Martin could sigh about how complicated things had become for me. Every sigh, every hint, every suggestion went straight to tape. And when Clara whispered one evening, thinking I had nodded off in the armchair, soon, Uncle Martin. Very soon, the tiny microphone sewn into my robe picked it up clear as a bell. The pieces were forming. The mask of fragility was working. They believed I was slipping. They believed the trap was theirs. But really, every act of theirs was being stitched into my web. And by the time they realized, it would be too late. There are moments when the whole world shrinks down to one sound. For me, it was the click of a recorder, the low hum of a camera, and the slow, steady footsteps of people who thought they'd won. I had spent weeks turning my hurt into strategy. Every whisper, every offhand lie, every soft cruelty was recorded, catalogued, and labeled. Marjorie had helped me organize the tapes, timestamps, locations, notes on who said what. She was my calm in a storm I'd learned to steer. She also had a friend from the local paper, Tom Hale, who owed her a favor. He listened to one tape and his voice on the phone went flat. This is big, he said. Bessie, this could ruin them. We can run a piece, but you'll need to be ready for the backlash. I smiled at him into the receiver. Then let's do it properly. I want this clean. I want it undeniable. We planned it like a small theater production. The stage, my living room. The cast, Martin, Clara, and a handful of relatives who had smelled opportunity and come hungry. The audience, a local reporter, a camera crew, and 2 plainclothes officers Marjorie had quietly spoken to at the courthouse. We made sure everything was legal. Recordings of conversations on my property, documents I had photographed at the notary, the power of attorney copies. No tricks. Just their words and their faces. Saturday arrived and the house felt like a pressure cooker, anticipation condensed into the air. I set out fresh flowers in the entryway and placed a plate with a slice of cake on the side table. Small domestic details to keep the mask on. I dressed in the green dress Martin had loved the first year we married. He always said it brought color back into my face. If theater teaches anything, it's that props matter. They came like wolves who think the prey is unaware. Martin led the way, holding the folder with an oddly casual pride, as if the papers inside made him larger. Clara followed, bright and composed, the same smile she'd worn when she offered me casseroles and thin consolation. They were joined by 2 cousins and Martin's sister-in-law, people who'd never been kind but were suddenly solicitous when money was a rumor. We sat. They talked. The first 10 minutes were a circus of small talk. Weather, football scores, how the garden looked this spring. I could hear their impatience like a tremor under the chatter. Tom Hale and his cameraman sat up by the window, quiet as surgeons. The 2 officers took a seat near the doorway, their expressions unreadable. Marjorie sat next to me, the paper folder I'd prepared cushioned in her lap. When Martin opened the folder and slid a copy of the power of attorney toward me, his voice was syrupy. It's for your protection, he said. It's so we can manage things together if you ever need help. Clara smiled and reached for his hand. "We just want to help," she cooed. I let their words wash over me until the moment was right. Then I stood and let my voice be the thing that cut through the room. "You all know what you were planning," I said, and the room snapped to attention as if someone had flipped a switch. Martin blinked, a thin smile dying. "Bessie." "Please, Martin," I said calmly. "Don't interrupt. I have something to play." I clicked the small recorder tucked into my sleeve. The room filled with a voice I knew too well. Clara's, crisp as a whisper, saying the very things she'd said in my kitchen and the hallway at midnight. The tape kept running. "Make her fragile. Get power of attorney. Use the stairs if she resists. Split it when she's gone." Clara's voice. Martin's concessions. Their laughter, their plans. Silence pressed on us like a weight. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Martin's face drained. "This is doctored," one cousin blurted, a reflex of panic. "You set us up." Marjorie held up the other folder. "We have paper copies from the notary. Time-stamped. You signed them." Mr. Hale recorded the notary office conversation on a separate tape. "We also have your phone call where you arranged the notary." She slid a copy across the table. It landed in front of him like a verdict. Martin reached for the folder as if to deny, but his hands betrayed him, shaky, fumbling. The cameraman's red light clicked. Tom Hale's voice was steady. "Miss Bessie, can you explain to our viewers, why did you record these conversations?" I looked at the faces around the table, at Clara, who now seemed very small, no longer the confident woman who'd set plans in motion. "Because they were planning to take my life. Not literally, but they planned to take everything from me. A home, a future, my dignity. They thought I'd be too tired, too sentimental, too blind with love to stop them." "I don't think so." Clara's lips trembled. That's a lie. I would never." "Play the tape," I said. We played it. The midnight tape, the notary tape, the call where Clara threatened to use the stairs if I resisted. Each one a blow. Tears began to fall on more than one cheek in that room, but they were not the same tears I had shed. When Marjorie dialed the police number and spoke quietly, the room became smaller still. The officers stood and moved, professional and deliberate, reading rights and taking statements while the camera continued to roll. Martin attempted to speak, to explain, to twist the narrative into something less criminal. This was about money, not harm. But the recorded words were a mirror he couldn't look away from. Clara was handcuffed first. Her face was wet with tears that did not sound like regret but panic. Martin fought, so did one of the cousins, but the officer's training is to be calm in the face of chaos. They took him in, then the cousins, one after another. Their voices rose in protest. Pleas, excuses, a sudden chorus of claims that they were being framed, but the evidence had a way of silencing theater. When the door closed and the officers led them away, the house held its breath. The camera crew kept filming until the vehicles drove off, documenting the moment the world I'd known was being packed into boxes and taken where it belonged, under the bright scrutiny of law. After they left, Tom Hale sat down across from me, exhausted and solemn. "Miss Bessie," he said, "this is going to be a big story. You understand that? People will talk. Some will celebrate, some will judge. Are you prepared for that?" I thought of the months of work, the nights of quiet recording, the humiliation that greed had tried to inflict. I thought of the small hands that once reached for my frosting and the woman who had become a stranger in the dark. I thought of what freedom might look like without their shadow over my house. I said. "Do what you must. Tell the truth." The article ran the next day. It ran with the headline, "Local Woman's Recordings Expose Family Plot Over Home and Assets." The video went viral, not because we wanted it to, but because it was honest, raw, and human. People sent messages, strangers who'd been betrayed, neighbors who'd watched us from a distance and felt too afraid to act, women who had been pushed aside by convenience. My inbox filled with stories and offers of help. It was a strange consolation to know I was not alone. The legal process moved with a steady cruelty. The prosecutor pursued charges of conspiracy to commit financial exploitation and elder abuse. At trial, the recordings were played. The defense tried to frame my preparation as entrapment, but the judge ruled that because the recordings were made on my property and concerned my person, they were admissible. The jury, after hearing the tapes and seeing the notary documents, returned a verdict of guilty. Sentences were handed down, Years that would give them time to think about what they'd traded for money. Those months were not only about legal closure. They were about reclaiming a life. I sold the house, not because I wanted to relinquish the place of memories, but because the walls had been witnesses to plans that nearly stole me. With the money I kept enough to live comfortably and set up a small fund. A modest scholarship for single women working their way through school. Books, fees, a hand up. I wanted my money to do what theirs had used it for. Give opportunities, not take lives. Marjorie and I planted a small rose garden outside my new home. It felt like a gentle victory, pink buds pushing through soil that had been turned over and aerated by truth. Tom kept in touch. Occasionally, a camera would ask for an interview and I would say yes, but I kept my private moments close. I learned the hard art of not shrinking anymore. A year later, a letter arrived with a folded page and shaky handwriting. Javier, no Martin, had written from a visiting room something that looked like apology and something that looked like reflection. He told me about nights with a hard mattress and harder thoughts. He said he missed the quiet of making coffee together and the way I hummed while I stitched. He asked if there was any hope for forgiveness. I read it twice, then a third time. I felt the small, old tenderness for the man I had once married. But tenderness was not the same as trust, and I had learned that forgiveness is not an overnight mercy but a slow, earned thing. I wrote back once. I told him the truth, that I held no hunger for revenge now, only for justice. I told him I hoped he would use the years ahead to become a man who could be forgiven someday. Whether he ever did was not mine to orchestrate. The thing that surprised me most was this. By exposing their greed and refusing to be silenced, I found a new family. Women who had been strangers sent casseroles, offers to take me to meetings, suggestions for the scholarship I wanted to start. I found friends in the people who had nothing to gain by my story but everything to give in kindness. If there is one thing this entire nightmare taught me, it is that survival is not the absence of fear. Survival is the decision to act when fear sits heavy on your chest. It is choosing truth even if the truth makes people uncomfortable. It is turning your scars into a map that can guide others. So yes, I did what I had to do. I set the recorder. I let them speak. I let the world watch. And when the world watched, the law did what the law is meant to do. My name is Bessie. I hid to surprise my husband once. What I found was betrayal, but what I built after was a life I chose for myself. If my story reaches you and you're sitting there thinking, what would I do? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Tell me which part shocked you most. Your messages keep me going. If you found this meaningful, please subscribe. There are more stories to tell and more women to lift. Thank you for listening.